What's going on, guys? So today's video we're going to talk about how much it costs to get the power this car made. So this car made 459 wheel horsepower, I believe, and 417 foot-pounds of torque. So now that we have a power number, we can talk about what this costs. So one thing to keep in mind, I started this build roughly, at least accumulating parts and stuff, in 2019, so some of these prices may be a little off. I'm going to include a Google Sheet with everything that I bought to get to this point. That way, if you wanted to look at it, you can. It'll link in the description. So, basically, the cost to get basically 460 horsepower out of this car was just under 11 grand. So that includes everything. So even if it was like a bolt-on that was on the car before, I'm including that. The clutch kit I put in the car, I'm including that, because it wouldn't have been able to make that power or sustain that power without doing that. So to me, there is some overlap there. And it also includes the fuel pump, which I was kind of on the edge of the limit of the stock pump. You may or may not have needed to do that. But we're going to go component by component and talk about what they cost. And just for a quick overview of what this is a stock bottom end Ls6 that I refreshed. New bearings, new rings, new bolts, every gasket replaced, new knock sensors, new sensors, everything. We're not going to include the sensors in this because I changed them voluntarily just because the engine was out. You didn't have to do that. I chose to spend the extra money to make sure I didn't have any weird issues down the road, just to make my life easier. But yeah, so stock bottom end Ls6, Vengeance Racing ported, Fast 102, Verum intake, Brian Tooley Racing Stage 4 cam, and Texas Speed 225 as cast heads. So we're going to go part by part. So total for the fast intake was $1,685. Not including the engine mounts you need, which I think were $150, which puts us up to $1,700, I believe. So that was for the intake. The porting was free. They were running a special, which was part of the reason I bought this. I have LS2 injectors that were sold to me by the first shop that tuned it, as well as an Ls3 Fuel Rail that also came from the first shop that tuned this, and that quick disconnect fuel line because they had the car, and I said go ahead and put the rail on it. They thought there was an issue with the injectors that were in it. I had spliced the EV6 connectors in because I didn't like the adapters. They're actually soldered in there. They're like, you could either run stock LS2s or pay us to change them again. So I said, if stock LS2s will make the power, let's do it. So that's what we did. This is an Ls3 Fuel Rail. That was $200 towards that total. We also have the Nick Williams 102 throttle body. That was also included in that cost. So one thing that I do want to mention is I don't think they sell this throttle body anymore. I think it's a 103 now. And I see a lot of mixed opinions on the internet about the 102 and the 103 of if you can really run them with the C5. People do complain about stalling issues, and I will admit that even after going to 2 different tuners and having some touch-ups done by a third, it does have some issues. Supposedly the computer can't process the throttle response fast enough and can't make the adjustments. I don't know how true that is, but it's worth mentioning. Some people run Silver Blade LS2 throttle bodies, supposedly with less issues, but I'm not the tuner, so I can't say for sure. My true advice would be check with whoever's tuning your car and talk to them first. The other thing you need are some adapter harnesses. They were pretty cheap. I included $300 in miscellaneous costs for stuff like the adapter harnesses, the AN fittings to make the crossover tube that looks like it's actually leaking on the radiator. But anyway, stuff like the new PCV that I had to make, this line for the other side of the PCV, stuff like that. That's all pretty minor. So then if you look down there, those are TPS Motorsports long tube headers. I got them before the engine went in, so they had a whole extra year on the car. I did them at the same time as the clutch. They were $1,000. I think they're still right around $1,000, but for my total, that's what I build them out at. I have no issues with them. Starter clearance could be a little better, but really not bad. I've seen worse. I've seen better. For the cost, really can't complain. We'll go back around to the front. So this is a Ram, same thing. That was on the car before we did the engine build. And if you're not familiar with the Ram, it actually draws from down here, which some people say you'll have hydrolocking issues. I've driven this in some torrential fucking downpours, to the point where like you can barely see. Never had any misfires, anything like that. Sure, the filter gets wet, but it should dry out eventually. As long as you're not driving through standing water, you shouldn't have an issue with it. And if you look, my car's pretty low. I don't know if I've ever had water up that high, but if you measure, those are higher than your door sills. So if you're that deep, you should be driving like something like that. But yeah, we'll keep it going. I'm going to verify a cost and we'll start the next clip. We'll just keep working our way down the motor. I don't think there's any stamps on these heads that are visible from, you know, where we are. There we go. PRC. So these are the PRC 225 ASCAS. They were $1,723. The way I kind of looked at it was originally this rebuild was supposed to happen in a weekend, and I didn't really have time to send the heads out for an unknown amount of time and wait for them to come back. So what we ended up doing was I ordered these ASCAS heads. I was looking for a set of cores. It didn't really add up to me. The cores were a couple $100 plus a couple $100 in shipping, plus like $1,000 importing, valve job, hot tank, sonic check, all that stuff. Didn't make sense. We bought these instead. There was one issue with these heads, and that was when they were shipped, the box was clearly mishandled. There was a little bit, not enough packing. And the valves ended up stabbing through the top of the box. So I hit Texas Speed Up. They said it should be fine. I took them to the machine shop, and I had them install the valve springs also while it was there. So they checked them out for $80 and installed the valve springs. I don't know how you want to build that out, but they checked them out. Everything was cool. Texas Speed paid me to get them checked. Said they'd replace anything if it was bent, so that was pretty cool of them. But yeah, that's what they cost. So you could call it $1,800 for them if you split the machine shop cost in half to install the springs and do the inspection. So that's what they were. We'll keep going down some more. So we have the Brian Tooley Racing cam that if you pretend you have x-ray vision, you can see. The cam was $400, and then the spring and retainer kit was also like right around $400. So that was $800 for cam and springs roughly, plus the insulation. So definitely right around $800. I did lifters as well, because the whole reason this car came apart was because I had a lifter freeze up, started to wipe the cam out, had a pretty gnarly misfire when it was cold, and made some awful noises. So I have other videos showing the damage if you want to check my channel for the other videos. But yeah, I got GM Performance lifters back when they were still cheap, directly from the Chevy dealer. I paid $150 for them, I think, or $180. This was before they adjusted the price to be the same as the regular replacement LS7 lifters. There was like a little life hack there, that you could get the GM Performance ones. There were direct drop-ins for basically every roller cam Chevy motor ever, even like back to the TPIs for like $150, when the replacement lifter was $400 for the set of 16. So obviously that will cost you a lot more now. If you can find OEM ones, they're right around $400. They're $400 from the Chevy dealer. But that's what that was. I did get a new timing set. That was like $50. You could get away with it, but like I said, I did a lot of preventative maintenance here. I did a lot of things that most people skip, and they don't have issues. But to me, I don't have a lot of free time now to be taking this car apart. If you've worked on a Corvette, they're not the fastest things to work on just because of packaging. If I had a timing chain break or something stupid like that, it's a pretty big job because the rack has to come off. The other thing I did is an Ati Balancer. So let's see if we can get in there and see that. So yeah, you can kind of see that Ati down there. So that was $400 roughly. I think it was $390 or something like that. So you could definitely go cheaper. You could buy another stock one. If you know the issues that C5s have with harmonic balancers, to me that seems kind of risky. Plus, you know, you could get another one. You could get a Summit. I think you get a fluid damper. They're both on the cheaper side. But to me, ATI is sort of local to me. They're in Baltimore. I'm in Delaware. They're not super far away. Made in the USA. Still made in Baltimore. Supporting localist jobs. To me, the extra $150 or whatever for the ATI over the Summit was worth it. But yeah, that's what's there. You could totally not do that. Like, that's one of those costs that I mentioned. You could skip it, and you probably wouldn't have any problems. And there wouldn't be any issues there, but it is what it is. So that covers most of the bolt-on parts that you absolutely have to do. And I guess I should mention that the cost was actually lower if you don't do a lot of the preventive maintenance things I did. And I'll get that total together. Say a total to do just the go fast parts. No preventative maintenance, no hot tank, no cam bearings, no lifters, no anything. It's right around $5,100. Really not that bad, all things considered. That's roughly half the cost of what I did here. If you include the headers, that's another $1,000, so it'd be $6,100. And you would be roasting your LS7 clutch or your stock clutch, whichever one you had, probably pretty quick. LS7 might hold up for a while, but the stock clutch definitely would not be happy. So then that talk goes to the clutch we have. So this is a McLeod RST clutch. I bought the full TIC performance kit, so let me grab the light again. If you can see down there, there is somewhere in there a TIC performance master cylinder there. You can kind of see it. And we have the stock slave. We have the TIC remote bleeder here, McLeod clutch, Fidanza lightweight flywheel, which we can talk about that later. And I paid them for the additional balancing from McLeod. So that's what we're running in this. That was like $1,850, I think, which was a lot of money. Like I said, that went in with the headers. So that was before the engine was ever built. I had that with the stock motor. It ran really good. The pedal feel with the stock master cylinder is phenomenal. You would never know it's a twin disc. It's a little chattery at idle. That's the only thing that I noticed. And some of that may have to do with the aluminum flywheel. I don't actually know. Some people say if you get it balanced, you have no chatter, but I can confirm that's not true. But yeah, so the aluminum flywheel supposedly is good for 10 horsepower. I don't know how much I believe that. It is reduced reciprocating mass. In theory, the engine can rev faster. So when you blip the throttle, you get more RPMs. That all seems true. I don't know about the horsepower thing, but that's what people say. But one thing to consider is if the engine revs faster up, it comes down just as fast. So if you believe that the reason these cars stall with this throttle body is because the computer can't respond fast enough, the RPM dropping so fast could contribute to the drivability and stalling issues. One thing to consider, like I said, check with your tuner. There's people on HP Tuners forums bitching about tuning lightweight flywheels. But, you know, take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, I'm not a tuner. I'm barely a mechanic, but that's what I think. So that covers most of the $11,000. Like I kind of mentioned briefly in the preventative maintenance thing, I did get this block hot tanked because I looked at my cam bearings and they were in fact bad. I should have listened to Matt Happel and I didn't. But they were bad. The block was super dirty. The machine shop was slowed because of COVID, luckily. Because I started building this car pretty much right as the lockdown started. So I took the block there, they hot tanked it, they did the cam bearings. That was like $300. We have a pretty good relationship with the machine shop because we send them a ton of work. Just general engines, not anything cool, but that's pretty much all the costs. The only thing I didn't mention was the fuel pump. I did a Walbro pump that used to be a Lingenfelter pump. Luckily, I have the one that you can access like right here, rather than having to drop the whole rear subframe right after I had it out. That was $200, I think. And obviously, if you're going to pay somebody to do this, add a ton of labor. This cost is just parts, no markup, directly as you get it from the same places I buy it. I included sources in this Google Sheets. If y'all think I missed anything, if you think I'm crazy, let me know. Leave a comment. I'm open to input. Personally, I think I wasted money. I'll make a whole separate video about it, but to me, 11 grand in a $25,000 car, you probably see where I'm going there. You know, it's almost 50% of the value of the car. The car's never given me any problems. I put a ton of miles on it. It's been super reliable, but for, 20 grand plus 11 grand, you're up at 30. You can get a pretty clapped out C6Z at that price, or maybe spend a little bit more money to buy a nice C6Z. Even with the head issues, I think overall they're better cars. They're worth the extra money. Because think of it this way. This car made roughly, say C6Zs make a conservative 5. They make 505 at the flywheel. Say they make 420 at the wheels. We spent almost the same amount of money, total cost, car plus build, to make 40 more horsepower. Does that make sense? I don't really think so. But anyway, thanks for watching. Feel free to argue with me about that. I will respond to your comments as I have time. But thanks for watching. I'll have some more content soon. Catch you guys later.